Alright boys, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm just going to be going over some of the new additions, specifically the more top tier vehicles in the Sons of Attila update. I'm going to start with the Leopard 2 PSO, mainly because the Americans didn't get a top tier main battle tank. The Leopard 2 PSO is coming in after the Leopard 2A6, which has now been flooded with the 2A5. Quite strange really, I would assume that the PSO would have been flooded with the 2A5. Seeing as this is a modification of the 2A5 Leopard. So the PSO stands for Peace Support Operations, I believe. We get a snowplow on the front. Well, I guess it's not really a snowplow, but that's what I thought in my head. It's obviously more for like bulldozing stuff out of the way. The tank is also covered in more composite armor all around the turret, well the side of the turret specifically, as well as the side of the hull. This gives you decent protection against chemical weapons. Not really that useful. Most things are going to be firing AP-FSDS at you. It is helpful for dealing with helicopters because you might be able to tank some of the incoming ATGMs, but do remember this is now a 67-ton vehicle with that added armor, compared to the original Leopard 2A5, which is a still quite heavy 59.5 tons. But we do now have 7.5 tons additional weight, and you don't really get any offensive capabilities with that additional weight. We still have the L44 120mm gun, as well as a fantastic DM53 AP-FSDS round. So you can't really criticise the tank for being or lacking offensive capability. The tank is just now a lot heavier compared to the original Leopard. So it's kind of a side grade rather than an upgrade in my opinion. We also get a 50 caliber machine gun mounted on the top of the turret. Kind of, well, it's like a gunner's turret really. It would usually be operated by it's usually operated by the loader when you're not having a main firefight really, rather than the commander. For operating in urban environments, that is kind of good, but in War Thunder it just does make the vehicle taller, so enemies will be able to spot you if you are trying to be sneaky. It's quite a big issue in simulator battles where having a low profile like the Soviets in simulator battles are incredibly powerful. Not really because the tanks are better, it's just because they're smaller and can hide a lot easier. So in my opinion, the Leopard 2 PSO is not really something that you should be rushing out and grinding. It is a backup Leopard, I guess, but you already have the 2A5, the 2A6 and the Leopard 2 PL, all of which are fantastic vehicles. So I wouldn't GE it if you're desperate for it, I would just grind it. It's not going to be better than the 2A5. It's a 2A5 with slightly better protection against some sort of rounds, but it is a lot heavier and therefore a lot less mobile. Going to the Soviets, we do not get any top tier main battle tanks, but we do get a new battle rating 8.0 premium, the TO55. This is a T55 which has lost the ammunition store next to the driver, and it's been replaced by a massive fuel tank of, I don't really know what you use in flamethrowers. I'm guessing it's kerosene and like petroleum, napalm kind of stuff. It's a flamethrower basically, which is in place of the coaxial machine. Well, you do have a coaxial machine gun as well, but you also now have a flamethrower. Not really too sure why they decided to add this, to be honest. It serves no purpose whatsoever. I guess you can flame some of the open top vehicles, but at battle rating 8.0 you don't really see them too often. Even against light tanks, this flamethrower is completely ineffective. It cannot penetrate armor obviously, so even if you've only got like structural steel armor like something like the Sheridan, I guess, it's still not going to do anything. So it's kind of a bit of a little bit, it's a massive gimmick really. We still do get the fantastic 100mm gun of the T55 though. This is paired again with the equally fantastic BR412D round. Got over 240mm of pen. Kind of a World War II style gun, but it is still incredibly powerful. That huge penetration with the 100 grams of TNT filler allow you to pretty much one-shot kill anything. You also get an APDS round with 330mm of pen, as well as a Heaterfest round with 380mm. So you have the decent armor and mobility of the T55, as well as the excellent penetration and general all-round good post-pen damage of the selection of weapons available to the TO55. Just don't go out and buy this because it's got a flamethrower on it. It's literally a complete gimmick. But if you do want a good rank 5 grinder for the Soviets, then it is kind of hard to suggest something else. The IS-6 is the natural thing to compare it to. It's a low battle rating, but it does have a very long reload, but with that fantastic armor it is very survivable. For the Brit Bongs, we have the Bishma. This is a I'm not really sure what it's called. A squadron vehicle, sorry, that's what I was looking for. It's a T90, I'm not sure it's a T90A, a T90S, I guess. I think that's the designation for the export for the engine. Basically, it's just a T90A without the IR Dazzlers and without the 3BM60 or 3BM46. I can't remember which round that tank gets. Basically, all we get is the 3BM42. We also get 3rd gen thermal imaging, which is very, very handy. But we are limited in the firepower department by the 3BM42 Mango round. However, at our battle rating of 10.3, that isn't really an issue, to be honest. 3BM42 Mango is better than any round the British get at 10.3, which is quite embarrassing for the Brit-bongers. But with the British, we haven't produced anything good since like this, well, probably the 50s really. You also get the 9M119M1 anti-tank missile with a tandem warhead. Very, very nice addition to the British tech tree. Almost certainly better than any of the other British MBTs apart from the top tier challengers. Isn't going to make a... Well, to be fair, I will say at 10.3 in the 10.3 British lineup, this is probably one of the stronger vehicles that you can use now. It's obviously got the same weaknesses as the Soviet T90 and T80 series of tanks. It's very slow reverse speed, quite weak armor profile from the side and rear. From the front it is quite trolly, but against an experienced player he will be able to yeet you out of the game very, very quickly. But a nice addition. I'm quite happy to use this in my 10.3 lineup where it will be very powerful. For the Japanese, we have the TKX. This is a prototype of the Type 10, I believe, or something. It's basically something like that. It's like a prototype version of what turned into the TKX and the Type 10. Like the T90S that we just looked at, the Bishma, this thing is limited in the firepower department. Instead of getting the Type 10 APD or APFSDS, which is found on the higher tier Japanese vehicles, we just have the JM33. This is the Japanese equivalent of it's the Japanese import of DM33. Still gives you 480mm of penetration, which is certainly nothing to laugh at. And at the reduced battle rating of 11.0, it is still very powerful for its battle rating. This is mainly just going to be a backup for your Type 10 and TKX though, as well as the Type 90 and Type 90Bs. So not exactly meta changing the TKXP. It's also in a different line than the other main battle tanks, the main battle tanks of the Japanese tech tree, so not really too sure why. It comes after the light tanks for anyone that's interested. Again though, nothing meta changing, not really. It's not really going to be a reason for people to go out and grind the Japanese. Japanese tech tree at top tier isn't particularly amazing. But a nice addition, good backup vehicle, but certainly you don't have a lineup at 11.0, so it is just a lighter armoured version of a TKX. For the Chinese, we have the MBT 2000. I think in Iranian or Pakistan service is called the Al Khalid, maybe? Might be, I'm not too sure what it is. In game though, it's called the MBT 2000. This doesn't really serve a purpose in game other than being a backup vehicle for the premium ZTZ 96A, as well as the tech tree ZTZ 96A. It's battle rating 10.0, as you can probably guess from that, and we do have the fairly decent 125i APFSDS round with over 460mm of penetration. The tank itself being based on a hybrid of a T72 chassis improved with more Western ideas. It's fairly decent, to be honest. It's fairly fast. It only has a 1200 horsepower engine. It is fairly light at 48 tons though, so you have a decent power to weight ratio. We have the same reload speed and reloading mechanism as the T72, so we do have it's reload every 7.5 seconds, which is quite slow, but it is kind of the standard for all Chinese vehicles. The tank itself only has first generation thermal imaging, which is a little bit of a letdown, but you can't really complain too much. This is a export tank, I believe, so it's not going to have all the best Chinese technology. Kind of strange though, considering that the premium ZTZ 96A has second gen thermals, but nevertheless a good backup for the Chinese 10.0 lineup, and it still even will be useful kind of at top tier. For the Italians, we get a lot of vehicles overall, but I'm only going to be covering one here. Most of the other tanks in the Hungarian lineup are just copy and paste from other nations, so it'd be a little bit redundant me going over them. In rank 7 though, we do get the Leopard 2A4, which again, that's another tech tree, so you already know what it is. That's at 10.3. Not particularly needed, to be honest. Italy doesn't have a 10.3 lineup, so again, it's purely just for backup. The real star of this update though in my opinion, and especially for the Italian tech tree, is the KF-41 Lynx. This is kind of like the Puma in the German tech tree. It has the same main gun I believe, or at least the same. It's the same, I believe it is the exact same gun, but even if it isn't, it basically works in the exact same way. This is a very mobile light tank. It's got a 1200 horsepower engine coming in at 44 tons, so it is very nippy around the battlefield. It also has a active protection system. This does give you some protection from incoming ATGMs. I believe it also works against heat FS rounds if I remember correctly. You do only have 2 charges for this, so it's not going to give you a lot of sustained protection, but it is nice to have, I guess. The main gun is a 30mm chain gun, and it can fire the AP FSDS rounds, giving you 120mm of penetration. Because of the low weight of the rounds though, you don't have the best angled penetration, so don't expect to be getting lots of kills with the gun. We do strangely also have a shrapnel round. This basically is a timed explosive shell really. It's not really that useful against enemy planes because it obviously sets to your rangefinder. So against helicopters maybe, but against planes it's not really that helpful. We also have the Spike LR2s. These are fire and forget tandem warheads. These missiles have 700mm of penetration and are practically top-down attack missiles. Due to the nature of them being fire and forget, they launch in a arc and then come down on top of the enemy. This has positives and negatives. The top of an enemy is generally the weakest part of a tank, but you obviously cannot guide them after launch. This means if an enemy dies, you can't redirect the missile, and you also can't pinpoint the weaker points of a tank. I've also found that these missiles tend to go towards the barrel of an enemy tank, which doesn't really result in them taking critical damage. The Lynx is also battle rating 10.7, which isn't really a lineup for the Italians, being more 11.3 and 11.7 dominated rather. Regardless though, this still does make a good light tank at top tier for the Italians, alongside the Freccia and some other of the speedy boys. Again though, it isn't really meta changing in my opinion. The spikes are a little bit of a gimmick, and the fact you can only carry 2 of them does limit the usefulness in my opinion. The 30mm gun is still quite powerful, but I don't think this is deserving of its 10.7 battle rating. I think this could easily go down to 10.0 and still be fairly, well, the KF-41 has the same potential as the Freccia. They both have the exact same weapons, apart from the 25mm gun of the Freccia, but a 5mm difference in gun bore isn't really going to, it isn't in my opinion worth that 0.7 battle rating increase. The Freccia and the KF-41 both have spikes and both have practically the same sort of weapon. The active protection system of the KF-41 might be a little bit of a factor, but I do not think that the Lynx should be 10.7. It should easily be 10.0. The French also have the Leclerc Azure. This is basically the same as the Leopard 2 PSO. It's just an urban combat modification really. I don't really see the point of them adding this. It's a Leclerc that's even heavier than the other Leclercs. Same good things about the French tank though. Same decent firepower, decent protection, but now it's just even fatter and heavier, making the Challenger 2 blush kind of. Anyway though, it's a good backup vehicle. We do have 4 Leclercs now in the French tech tree, so can't complain, but this is the end of the line of the French tech tree, but it's kind of the worst Leclerc to play, so not really a great motivation for people who want to grind the French tech tree. Anyway, for the the Swedish, I apologise, we do not have a top tier vehicle either, but we do get the Vidar. This is a self-propelled howitzer. It has a does it have a stabilized gun? No, it does not. Anyway, the tank is still, well, the Spag, not Spag, what the hell, I'm getting confused. The self-propelled howitzer is very, very powerful, mainly due to its incredibly high velocity gun, as well as the 155mm OEF3 high explosive shell. Travelling at 935 meters per second, for reference that's a little bit slower than the gun of the Tiger 2, and it packs 9 kilos of TNT, allowing it to penetrate any armour 61mm and below. This gun and ammunition combined with the laser rangefinder allows you to accurately place shots at all ranges, and it will kill pretty much anything that you hit on the lower part of the turret or a commander's cupola. You could also shoot for just underneath an enemy tank, but that is riskier, you might not do as much damage. You are better probably going for the lower part of the turret and splashing that enemy. You also have a high explosive variable time shell, pretty decent for taking out planes that are coming towards you, but you obviously don't have any radar guidance system on this tank, so don't be trying to do like 2-kilometer deflection shots. If an enemy plane is stupid enough to fly pretty much straight towards you, then this is a good round to use. The Vidar also has a pretty slow reload speed, I believe. With an ace crew, it drops down to 6 seconds, which is very respectable for a 155mm howitzer gun. I don't know if it has a auto-loading system. I believe it probably has some sort of semi-automatic loader. It does have a first stage ready rack of 2 rounds, which is quite small. I'm not sure about the reload after that. But anyway, it's its battle rating of 7.7. It makes a very potent... It's not a good grinder, but it's a good amount of fun. It also has thermal imaging, as well as that laser rangefinder, as I said. So it's a very effective weapon just for like trolling people and having some fun. It's kind of like a high explosive version of the Object 120 in the Soviet territory. And that's pretty much it, boys. There's no other vehicles that I think are worth mentioning. There are quite a lot of Hungarian vehicles that have been added, but none of them are particularly that impressive, to be honest. They're kind of just copies of German vehicles, I guess. Anyway, boys, I don't want to take up any more of your time. I hope you're having a good day, a fantastic patch week, and I'll see you in the next video. Hey lads, if you made it this far into the video, then thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. I have a whole load of other content on my channel, including tutorials and other vehicle reviews, so why not give them a watch, and if you like them, please do consider subscribing. Thanks again for watching though, boys. I've been SAKO, and I'll see you in the next video.